Hello. Today, Road to GH will reveal in the wake of Drew's shooting and the harrowing aftermath of the trial, Alexis Davis finds herself navigating not just legal gray areas, but also the rising tension surrounding new evidence that threatens to destabilize the fragile resolution Port Charles has clung to. The court may have declared Willow Tate not guilty, but the reality behind the verdict is far from settled. As whispers about a mysterious ringtone begin to circulate, a song intimately tied to Drew's daughter Scout, Alexis must now weigh the cost of pursuing justice against the risk of fracturing lives that have only just begun to recover. The details are subtle, but they matter. The ringtone that played on Willow's phone outside the courthouse was Twinkle Twinkle, a lullaby so innocuous that it might have gone unnoticed by most. But for Drew, it should have stirred recognition because that same tune had long been the ringtone he set for Scout. And Scout, of course, is not just his daughter. She's a living connection to his fractured past, and to the innocence that was nearly destroyed when he was shot. Yet Drew didn't react. There was no flash of memory, no flicker of recognition. Either the trauma has severed his associations entirely, or something else has dulled his instincts. Regardless, the missed detail may now become a pivotal clue in a deeper investigation that's about to surface. Kai, who works closely with Drew and had knowledge of that specific ringtone, may be the one to unravel it. He was present during a conversation months earlier where Drew mentioned it in relation to Scout, and now, hearing the same tone from Willow's phone, the implications are chilling. Kai's silence since that courthouse moment has likely not been driven by fear, but by caution. Both he and Trina were in Drew's house at a time they shouldn't have been, an action that could easily paint them as suspects if anything new were to come to light. That makes going to the police a dangerous move. It would put them in the spotlight, perhaps unjustly, and risk turning an accidental discovery into a self-incriminating confession. This is where Alexis Davis becomes central to the narrative. Known for her strategic legal mind and her ability to operate in the murky in-between of morality and law, Alexis is uniquely positioned to take this information and apply it without triggering a legal firestorm, at least, not yet. The weekly teaser hinting at someone unexpected arriving at Alexis's office now feels more loaded. If it is indeed Kai, and if he comes alone, it suggests that he's carefully choosing to unburden himself to someone who won't react impulsively. Alexis, as a journalist-turned-lawyer with deep personal investment in many of the players involved, is the ideal confidant. She listens, absorbs, analyzes, and most importantly, she knows when to act and when to hold her cards close. Should Kai tell her about the ringtone, it would place Alexis in a dangerous ethical position. She would possess evidence circumstantial but potentially significant that could cast doubt on Willow's innocence. Yet the legal system has already spoken. Reopening the case or presenting new evidence without due cause could be seen as malicious, or worse, a violation of judicial process. Alexis must consider whether the ringtone alone is enough to link Willow definitively to the shooting, or if it is simply a red herring that plays into Kai's guilt and paranoia. Her decision to say, "I'll handle it," is not just about protecting Kai, it's about controlling the timing, the framing, and the implications of this new discovery. Meanwhile, the emotional landscape continues to shift. Willow may have escaped conviction, but her standing in the community, and with Drew himself, is precarious. If Drew begins to recall the ringtone connection, or if Alexis chooses to confront him with it, the fragile trust that has been patched together since the trial could collapse entirely. Worse, if Michael Corinthos is dragged into the mess, as some speculate he may be implicated in covering up details to protect Willow, the fallout could extend far beyond one broken marriage. It could detonate the entire Corinthos family dynamic and place Michael in legal jeopardy. In all of this, Alexis must consider not just the legal implications but the moral ones. She knows what it means to live with the burden of secrets, especially those that erode relationships and rewire people's lives in subtle, irreversible ways. Her decision to take on this burden from Kai is not an act of shielding him, it's an act of preserving agency. By controlling the narrative, she protects not only her client but the broader system from descending into chaos. However, that control comes at a cost. Alexis is no stranger to the weight of responsibility, and in this case, what begins as a small, strange ringtone might blossom into a full-blown crisis of conscience. As this story unfolds, Alexis may soon find herself orchestrating a legal and emotional chess game. If new evidence does emerge, she must anticipate every move, who to tell, when to act, what public perception might be. And more critically, she must ask whether reopening the past serves justice or simply re-traumatizes a town already frayed by betrayals and violence. Port Charles is not a place where secrets stay buried forever. Alexis Davis knows that better than most. And in the silence between each note of Twinkle Twinkle, a storm is gathering. The shocking truth finally unveiled in General Hospital confirms what many viewers have long suspected: Willow Tate did, in fact, attempt to murder Drew Kane. This revelation, brought to light through a chilling series of flashbacks, redefines everything that had previously been understood about the night of the attack and exposes a deeply premeditated plan. For months, the ambiguity surrounding the shooting left room for sympathy, for misunderstanding, even for denial. But now, through carefully placed visual fragments and narrative reveals, it has become clear that Willow acted not in fear, but in calculation, methodical, prepared, and deeply resolved to take a life. Her actions weren't a burst of rage but a slow-burning retaliation for the losses she attributes to Drew, most notably the devastating loss of her child. What many thought could have been an accident is now revealed as an act rooted in grief, vengeance, and a desire for control. One of the most telling revelations comes from the visual of Willow at the Quartermaine mansion, silently pulling on gloves and retrieving a pistol from Edward Quartermaine's antique collection. She was not panicked or impulsive. She was calm, deliberate. She selected her weapon, ensured there would be no fingerprints, and moved with the precision of someone who had rehearsed this moment in her mind over and over again. The gloves became a subtle but significant tool in her strategy. So when, during the courtroom proceedings, prosecutor Justine Turner asked her whether she had ever handled the weapon, Willow was able to truthfully reply no. Her fingerprints were not on the gun. Her hands had never directly touched it. In the narrowest legal sense, she told the truth, but that technicality also underscores just how carefully she had planned the attack. This wasn't merely a crime of passion, it was a meticulously crafted plan to destroy the man she believed destroyed her life. Once armed, Willow drove alone to Drew's home. The flashbacks show a ghostly stillness in the car, as if she had entered a psychological state of tunnel vision. She was focused, not conflicted. There was no trembling, no hesitation in her eyes. And when she confronted Drew, there were no words, only the unflinching sound of two gunshots, each fired from close range, each tearing into Drew's back with lethal intent. Some have interpreted the dual shots as symbolic, a bullet for each child she had lost or could no longer protect. Whether literal or metaphorical, the message was unmistakable. This was vengeance, plain and raw, delivered by a woman who had reached the edge of her emotional capacity and chosen violence as her only remaining form of expression. And yet, despite her planning, Willow failed. Not because of her own hesitation or some last-minute change of heart, but because Drew survived. His body, broken but not destroyed, was rescued by the fast actions of Port Charles doctors. Thanks to their relentless efforts, Drew lived. And in surviving, he unknowingly became the silent witness to Willow's crime. But the horror doesn't end there. What adds an additional layer of unease is Willow's behavior following the event. She returned to her normal life. She stood beside Drew in public. She cried for him. She pretended to grieve the very trauma she orchestrated. In doing so, she played her role with chilling commitment, keeping up appearances while harboring a deadly secret. Her courtroom testimony, now seen in retrospect, was filled with half-truths and semantic gymnastics. She admitted to being in distress. She even alluded to trauma. But at no point did she acknowledge the rage that had driven her to steal a gun and hunt down the man she blamed for her child's death. Every response was crafted to appear fragile, relatable, even pitiable. But beneath the surface was a woman who had made peace with the darkest corners of her own mind and had decided that Drew needed to be erased. That is the true shock of these flashbacks. Not just that she did it, but that she could wear the mask of innocence so convincingly afterward. The implications are vast. Now that the truth has emerged, whether publicly or privately, several lives hang in the balance. Drew, who once offered Willow support and protection, may now struggle to reconcile the image of his attacker with the woman he trusted. The Quartermaines, already fractured by legacy, betrayal, and moral ambiguity, will be forced to confront the rot within their own walls, both literally, in the case of the weapon, and figuratively. in the psychological toll it has taken. And then there is the legal system, which must wrestle with the fact that Willow was already acquitted, her crime dismissed before it was even known. The law, it seems, may no longer be able to touch her. She is free in the eyes of the court, but bound by the weight of what she's done. Still, the greatest risk may not be legal, it may be personal. Secrets in Port Charles have a way of rising to the surface, and Willow's ability to maintain this weight is slipping. Those around her, including Michael, Alexis, and even Trina, may soon start noticing the cracks. Her quiet moments of detachment, her overreactions, her carefully calculated interactions with Drew. All of it adds up. And when the people closest to her begin to suspect the truth, the unraveling could be as brutal and chaotic as the crime itself. If Drew remembers even a fragment of that night, of a detail, a scent, or a sound brings the memory flooding back, Willow's carefully built wall of innocence will crumble. In the end, these flashbacks do more than fill in the gaps. They redefine Willow's character. She is no longer simply the grieving mother, the loyal wife, the gentle soul. She is a woman forged in loss, bent by betrayal, and ultimately twisted by her own pain into someone capable of taking a life. Whether that makes her evil, broken, or merely human is a question the audience and Port Charles must now wrestle with. But one thing is certain, nothing will be the same now that the truth is out. Willow Tate did not stumble into darkness. She walked into it, eyes wide open. In recent episodes of General Hospital, a startling shift in perception has taken place within the minds of Trina Robinson and Kai. Initially, their suspicions pointed toward Michael Corinthos as the one who shot Drew Kane. This theory was rooted in a seemingly innocent detail. The ringtone Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Trina and Kai had believed this gentle melody was the unique ringtone Michael used for Wiley Quartermain Corinthos, his son. In a world where the smallest detail can unravel a mystery, the ringtone had become a potential piece of the puzzle, an audio clue linking Michael to the night of the crime. Their suspicions seemed validated when Joe Palmieri encouraged Wiley to call Michael, and both Trina and Kai heard that same distinctive ringtone play from Michael's phone. It was a moment of quiet horror, chilling confirmation that the sound they had heard on the night Drew was shot might indeed have belonged to Michael's device. The implication was dangerous. Michael had been near the scene, perhaps even holding the phone that rang out into the night just before the gunfire. This connection added weight to the theory that he had pulled the trigger, and it briefly seemed that a son might be the unexpected betrayer of his father's trusted friend. But what followed turned their theory inside out. On another occasion, Wiley placed a call not to Michael, but to Willow, and as the phone rang, the same lullaby floated into the air. Twinkle Twinkle. That sound, so gentle and childlike, instantly transported Trina and Kai back to the night of the shooting. They had both heard that ringtone in the darkness, moments before the shots rang out. But now it was coming from Willow's phone, not Michael's. It was this eerie coincidence, or perhaps not a coincidence at all, that caused Trina and Kai to abruptly pivot in their thinking. If the ringtone that matched the one they heard during the crime came from Willow's phone, then it wasn't Michael who was there that night, it was Willow. And that changes everything. This realization struck with a quiet violence. For Kai and Trina, who had been willing to investigate Michael to ensure justice was served, it was a confusing yet relieving discovery. They never truly wanted Michael to be guilty, and now they believed he wasn't. However, the shift in their theory created a new problem. It implicated Willow, someone who had never been on their radar, someone who had seemed too fragile, too grieving, too composed to carry out such a violent act. And yet the ringtone didn't lie. Or rather, it suggested a truth that only the flashbacks confirmed. Willow had been there, and she had pulled the trigger. Despite the clarity that seemed to emerge for Trina and Kai, the situation remains delicate. They lack hard evidence, no eyewitness account, no camera footage, no forensic proof. Their theory is grounded in memory, in audio cues, in intuition sharpened by trauma. To go to the police with this would mean risking their credibility, especially without corroboration. After all, a ringtone, however specific, is not a confession. And without a recording or a direct witness placing Willow at the scene with a weapon, the case is nothing more than conjecture. Still, the audience knows more. Thanks to the increasingly revealing flashbacks woven through recent episodes, viewers have seen what the characters haven't. Willow donning gloves, retrieving a weapon, and firing to cold, calculated shots into Drew Kane. These glimpses confirm the darkest suspicions and add weight to Trina and Kai's fears. Willow's face in the flashbacks is not one of confusion or accidental rage, it's one of purposeful action. She knew what she was doing. She knew what she wanted. And she almost succeeded. But because of the skilled doctors at General Hospital, Drew lived. And now he, and everyone around him, is unknowingly coexisting with the woman who tried to end his life. Trina and Kai's current position is complicated. They don't particularly care about Drew, at least not personally. There's no deep emotional investment in his well-being, and their actions aren't driven by some moral debt to protect him. But there is a principle at play, a quiet sense of fairness. If Michael didn't shoot Drew, he shouldn't bear the suspicion. And if someone else did, if Willow did, then that truth needs to surface, not necessarily out of vengeance, but because the world can't function when lies are allowed to stand as truth. But again, they're stuck. How do you prove guilt without evidence? How do you accuse someone without proof, especially someone so tightly woven into the social and emotional fabric of Port Charles? Willow is not an outsider. She's a mother, a wife, a woman who has already endured so much public loss. Accusing her of attempted murder would shake the town, and with no solid proof, it could backfire spectacularly. Trina and Kai, especially given their own proximity to the crime scene and past missteps, know better than to rush into the storm without armor. For now, they hold onto what they know, to matching ringtones, one memory of a night that changed everything, and the unsettling clarity that comes with knowing you've seen a glimpse of the truth. Whether they act on it remains to be seen. But Port Charles has never been a place where secrets stay buried for long. And when the day comes that Drew remembers something, or the ring of Twinkle Twinkle triggers the wrong memory in the wrong place, everything will begin to unravel. Until then, the truth sits quietly in the background, like a lullaby before a storm. And now, as the threads begin to tighten around Port Charles, the web of silence, suspicion, and fragmented truths has never felt more dangerous. Alexis Davis stands at the heart of it all, holding fragile pieces of a truth she didn't seek but can no longer ignore. Between legal technicalities and whispered confessions, she finds herself once again in the role of moral anchor, asked to carry knowledge that could shift the balance of everything. The twinkle ringtone, so deceptively innocent, has become a sonic specter haunting not just Kai and Trina, but the very notion of justice itself. Its melody carries with it the weight of betrayal, of false assumptions, and of a hidden truth buried under calculated silence. Willow, now exposed by haunting flashbacks, is no longer the grieving wife or the fragile survivor. She is the architect of a crime, a woman who saw no other way but violence to reclaim the narrative of her life. Her decision to wear gloves, to fire without hesitation, to lie with technical precision, all of it reveals a mind not overtaken by momentary madness, but one shaped by profound, simmering loss. And yet, she walks free, protected by the law's blind spots and the emotional inertia of those too afraid to question her facade. Michael, for his part, becomes a tragic mirror, suspected for what was never his to own, burdened by proximity and family ties to a woman capable of deceiving even him. That Trina and Kai were willing to suspect him, and now struggle with the knowledge that they were wrong, only deepens the emotional dissonance of the moment. Their desire to pursue the truth was not driven by vengeance, nor even justice for Drew, but by a fundamental belief that the guilty should bear the weight of what they've done. Now that belief is twisted into silence, because without proof, the truth is just another dangerous theory. And so, Port Charles waits. Drew, still healing, lives unaware of just how close he came to dying at the hands of someone he trusted. Alexis wrestles with whether to expose what she knows or wait for fate to push the truth into daylight. Kai and Trina remain on the edge, paralyzed by knowledge without evidence. And Willow, the woman behind it all, continues to exist in a liminal space, free by law, condemned by memory, and touched by consequence. But in Port Charles, secrets never sleep forever. They surface in the ring of a phone, in the flash of a half-remembered face, in the trembling silence between two people who can no longer look at each other the same way. When that silence breaks, when Drew finally remembers, or Alexis decides to act, or Willow cracks under the pressure, the fallout will be seismic. Relationships will implode. Loyalties will fracture. And those who thought they were safe behind the veil of technicalities will find that truth, no matter how delayed, has a way of arriving on its own terms.